If there's one concept or term that I've seen listed more than any others in the comment section here, it's the H-1B visa. A lot of people talk about it, have an opinion on it, and it seems like a popular topic, so I figured I'd make a video today about that. Hopefully this video does well and a lot of people join us for this conversation. So before we get started, if you have any comments, thoughts, experience on this is the video to leave those comments down below. I read and respond to every single comment, so I'd love to have a conversation and also learn more about your experience and your knowledge of H-1B visas, and we can compare it to what the government has to say about these visas. So we're going to talk about what they are, how do you get one, and the effects on the economy. Let's dive in. So the article that we're going to go over today is from the American Immigration Council, and I'm going to leave this link down in the description below so you can read the full thing for yourself. The headline is the H-1B visa program and its impact on the U.S. economy. And it says foreign workers fill a critical need in the U.S. labor market, particularly in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. Every year, U.S. employees seeking highly skilled foreign professionals compete for a pool of H-1B visa numbers for which U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services controls the allocation. With a low statutory limit of visa numbers available, demand for H-1B visas have outstripped the supply in recent years, and the visa cap has been reached before the year ends. Research shows that H-1B visas complement U.S. workers, fill employment gaps in many STEM opportunities, and expand job opportunities for all. So then the first question from me is 2024 the right year to do this? If the average American is struggling to get a job, is this appropriate? I get when you have a country, I at first said company, but it's kind of the same thing these days, and you want to be able to fill it with the best workers around. But are you telling me that with so many Americans out of work that you need to find people from other countries to fill that void? That with the true amount of people who have been laid off or fired or let go, however you want to look at it, there's not enough Americans to fill jobs these days? Because I gotta say that is a completely different narrative than the reality of what's going on. But that's the problem if you just believe these fake unemployment numbers, because it doesn't take into consideration those folks who are underemployed, working a job that's maybe $15 an hour when they used to make $20 an hour. It doesn't take into consideration the people who have to work 3 different jobs, whether it be delivering pizzas, flipping burgers, or delivering food to people. And it also doesn't include the people who are searching for a job but don't file for unemployment, or even if you're on unemployment, at some point you fall off and then you're not counted anymore. So if you're only going off of fake numbers and fake news, if you will, then you might not think there's a problem. But if someone was honest and doing a real deep dive into the reality of the 2024 job market, they would see just how bad things are. And yes, there could be times and there could be years where we need to supplement American work with folks from other countries. But 2024 sure as heck is not one of those years. Okay, so what is the H-1B visa? The H-1B is a temporary non-immigrant visa category that allows employers to petition for highly educated foreign professionals to work in specialty occupations that require at least a bachelor's degree or the equivalent. Jobs in fields such as mathematics, engineering, technology, and medical sciences often qualify. Typically, the initial duration of an H-1B visa classification is 3 years, which may be extended for a maximum of 6 years. So that's interesting to me because from my friends that I've talked to who are from other countries, it seems like the U.S. doesn't really recognize degrees from other countries. So I'm not really sure how that works. Maybe it's only in certain categories. I mean, I know people from other countries who have been full-fledged dentists who can't be dentists here. They just have to be, I think, dental hygienists, I think is the word. And people who have, engineering degrees that the U.S. doesn't recognize. So I got to imagine it depends on your actual degree and the country that you're from, because this is not a full blanket of anyone who has a degree or anyone who is skilled from another country it's got to just be particular to certain industries and certain countries as well. The article goes on to say that before an employer can file a petition with the USCIS, they must take steps to ensure that hiring the foreign worker will not harm U.S. workers. Employers must first attest on a labor condition application certified by the Department of Labor that employment of the H-1B worker will not adversely affect the wages and working conditions of similarly employed U.S. workers. So that one might be pretty straightforward because just because they hire people at lower salaries doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give pay cuts to the American workers. Second, employers must also provide existing workers with notice of their intention to hire an H-1B worker. And I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's as simple as saying that you must declare you're doing business as when you start a business in the newspaper. It's unlikely that people are ever going to read that, right? So maybe if they have it buried somewhere on the internet, they've officially informed people, but it's not like they're talking about it in a conference call or sending an email directly to you about them hiring an H-1B. At least I've never seen that. Since the category was created in 1990, Congress has limited the number of H-1Bs made available each year. The current annual statutory cap is 65,000 visas, with 20,000 additional visas for foreign professionals who graduate with a master's degree or doctorate from a U.S. institution of higher learning. For fiscal year 2023, the cap was reached on August 23, 2022. So it's good that they're putting a cap on this, and it's not, at least from an H-1B perspective, not a completely wide open door like the southern border is. But still, if you've been watching this channel, you've seen all the layoffs. If companies are laying off anywhere between 7 and sometimes 15, 20% of their workforce, and we're seeing 2,000 people here, 4,000 people there, 6,000 people here are being laid off at a time from just one organization at a time, I think that it might not be appropriate to bring in 20,000 people from other countries when you could easily find 20,000 people in a month who are U.S. citizens who live here who could definitely use those jobs. This next sentence may be a trigger warning for some, so be prepared. During the Trump administration, the USCIS initially denied a larger percentage of H-1B visa petitions than in the preceding 4 years. But with a growing number of these denials being overturned, the denial rates decreased substantially during the latter half of fiscal year 2020. Denials of new H-1B petitions for initial employment rose from 6% in fiscal year 2025 to a high of 24% in fiscal year 2028, before dropping to 21% in fiscal year 2019, 13% in fiscal year 2020, 4% in fiscal year 2021, and only 2% in fiscal year 2022, the two lowest denial rates ever recorded. That's a lot of numbers very, very quickly, but if you're interested, check out the article down below. There's charts and graphs, and it makes it easier to understand. The denial rate for petitions for continuing employment was 2% in both fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2021, down from 7% in fiscal year 2020 and 12% in both fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2019. So that's what the H-1B visa is. Now, how do you register for this? Prior to 2020, employees were required to submit full H-1B petitions without knowing whether a visa number would be available, given that demand for visa numbers usually outstrips supply. In March 2020, for fiscal year 2021 beginning October 1st, 2020, the USCIS changed to a registration process for employers that occurs before a full petition is required. The purpose of this new process was to reduce the burden of U.S. employers and the agency caused by requiring employers to submit complete H-1B petitions and supporting documentation prior to knowing whether a visa number would be available. Each year, the USCIS will announce the next registration period, during which a U.S. employer must register electronically for each foreign national for whom they intend to file an H-1B petition for. Before the USCIS required registration, the agency conducted a lottery to determine which employees' petitions for H-1B workers would be processed if the cap was hit during the first 5 business days of the fiscal year. From fiscal year 2008 to fiscal year 2020, The annual H-1B cap was reached within the first 5 business days on 8 occasions. So this is obviously something that most employers are going to want to do because they're able to get lower cost labor from other countries, and especially if in their home country they have a bachelor's or a master's degree. I mean, they're going to get someone who's pretty smart at really a fraction of the cost. So it's just crazy. It's kind of like people lining up for, toys at Christmas. It's like you got to get the hottest new toy before it sells out, right? It's the same kind of situation here. These employers are rushing to go and get as many H-1B employees as they possibly can, and they're being capped in the first 5 days, right? It's similar to maybe trying to, I don't know, get a Taylor Swift concert ticket or something like that, where you're waiting, loading, hoping to be able to get a ticket, and maybe you finally do. The agency will send notification electronically if it selects a registration. They will give the U.S. employer at least 90 days to file its H-1B petition. If those whose registrations are selected do not submit enough petitions to use the available visa numbers, the USCIS has the option to make additional selections. For fiscal year 2024, the USCIS received 780,884 registrations and decided that 758,994 registrations were eligible. For the first time since the registration system began in fiscal year 2021, the USCIS received more eligible multiple registrations, those filed on behalf of a non-citizen with more than one registration, than single registrations. 408,891 compared with 350,103. The USCIS expressed serious concerns about whether this was due to the abuse of the system, which the agency said it was committed to deterring and preventing. The USCIS initially selected fewer registrations in fiscal year 2024, due in part to the petition filings, but then conducted a second selection on July 31st, 2023, for a total of 188,400. For fiscal year 2023, the agency received 483,927 registrations, decided 474,421 were eligible, and selected 127,600 registrations on March 29th, 2022, which was sufficient to meet the fiscal year 2023 cap. In contrast, for fiscal year 2020, the agency received 308,613 registrations, decided 301,447 were eligible, but conducted 3 selections totaling 131,924 during 2021, because fewer selected employers than predicted actually submitted applications. So this channel is all about basically how unfair the current job market is and how impossible things are. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. You could look at it as you're looking to apply for a job, but unfortunately they're all ghost jobs. They're not real. They're just ways of gathering your information to go and sell it to the highest bidder. It's impossible to know if you have any sort of job security, because even if you plan on sticking it out with a company you don't even like, you never know when you're going to be on the chopping block and be a part of the latest layoffs. Even a company like PricewaterhouseCoopers, who hasn't done a major layoff in 15 years, did one this year, or is planning to do one this year. But then you also got to look at your competition, right? So you're competing with your fellow Americans who have been laid off. And in addition to that, I mean, I think a lot of people focus on just the amount of people being let into the southern border, but I think it is smart and wise to also look at the H-1B situation. Even if all these people who are approved don't eventually wind up coming, just the fact that the US government, with all the layoffs to American citizens, think this is a time to supplement work and that it's appropriate to hire people from other countries when your own citizens are struggling to get work, I think is really, really screwed up. So, we saw 2023, they felt about almost 500,000, almost 500,000 people were eligible to come into the country and take jobs that require a bachelor's degree. And then in fiscal year 2024 so far, they approved almost 750,000, right? So I think it was 750,000. I mean, that's a lot of people to add to this workforce when you don't have And when the average American is struggling so much to get a job. I mean, if it was truly a situation like the media will tell you that nobody wants to work, then okay, maybe let in a bunch of people. But with all of these layoffs and all these terminations, and with how hard it is for people to get jobs, because even if you were to go in 2024 up to someone in person, they would tell you, oh no, go apply online. And then you apply online and you never hear anything back. And if you do hear back, it's just a cold rejection letter. And then on top of that, now you got to compete with people from other countries. How is anybody supposed to pay their bills? How is anybody supposed to make ends meet? It's just absolutely ridiculous out here. The article goes on to say that the number of H-1B visa holders admitted into the United States plummeted in 2020 as a result of travel and visa restrictions implemented by the Trump administration in response to the pandemic. The Department of Homeland Security's Office of Immigration Statistics reports that the number of H-1B recipients who were admitted into the country rose from 570,368 in fiscal year 2018 to 601,594 in fiscal year 2019, and then dropped to 368,440 in fiscal year 2020. The restrictions imposed by Trump on the recipients of non-immigrant work visas, such as the H-1B, expired in March 2021 and were not renewed by the Biden administration. The next section is on how this affects the economy. According to many economists, the presence of immigrant workers in the United States creates new job opportunities for native-born workers. This occurs in 5 ways. First, immigrant workers and native-born workers often have different skill sets, meaning that they fill different types of jobs. As a result, both workers complement each other in the labor market rather than competing for the exact same jobs. Don't know about that. Second, immigrant workers spend and invest their wages in the U.S. economy, which increases consumer demand and creates new jobs. Yeah, but if they're getting paid a lot less than their American-born counterparts, then it's not as much money, right? Third, businesses respond to the presence of immigrant workers and consumers by expanding their operations in the United States rather than searching for new opportunities overseas. I mean, if the door is wide open, it doesn't seem like that's happening, right? Every article we read is about companies either offshoring to India or nearshoring to Mexico or straight up moving everything to Mexico. So I don't see how letting people from other countries into the United States and giving them the jobs that we're all fighting for is helping in that case. Companies are literally having their cake and eating it too. They're able to get low-cost, low-wage workers from other countries and then also ship out jobs overseas. So they're having a great number of jobs that are being shipped overseas without having to pay high salaries, obviously, and then on the people who physically have to be there in person, because the only real remote work is if you are remotely working from another country as a foreign citizen, and then the people who are working in the office, if they're also from out of the country, then yeah, you're saving a ton of money on salary. Fourth, immigrants themselves frequently create new businesses, therefore expand the U.S. labor market. Yeah, but for the jobs that people are qualified for and have been working, I mean, are that many foreign-born people who are being let in on H-1B visas starting big-time corporations that's going to hire thousands and thousands of American workers? I'm not so sure that's happening. And fifth, the new ideas and innovations immigrants developed fuel economic growth. So there's a lot more to that article, but didn't want this video to go on for too long, but I wanted to go over exactly what an H-1B visa is, how do people apply, the statistics around the number of people who are eligible each year for the H-1B visas, and talk about its effects on the economy and give my own personal 2 cents about what's going on. But down in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Have you worked with someone who's been on an H-1B visa? Have you seen alerts or announcements for these hirings? Have you lost a job and then been replaced by someone on H-1B visa? Love to hear all about it down in the comments below. And like I said, I read and respond to every comment, even if it's just a heart. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about the American middle class losing their jobs to H-1B visa holders. Talk to you later.